So, our topic is survivorship bias, which is a type of selection bias where conclusions and/or assumptions are drawn only from those who have succeeded or survived. An easy example of this is Mark Zuckerberg. He dropped out of Harvard and it was against all odds, all advice, and because he did that, you should too, when this very clearly ignores your own situation, your own reality, and the obstacles that you have at hand. So they did a study on mental health in the UK, and it was a longitudinal study, and over time there were multiple surveys sent out and fewer people started to respond to them, and those people weren't counted at the end of the study, and those were actually the people who were most likely experiencing major mental health issues as opposed to the ones who did respond, who were doing a little bit better, and so those were the ones who were accounted for. So another associated danger is in people who say, I turned out fine, or they look at their child or their friend and they say, you turned out fine. And these arguments are clear examples that deny one's authentic lived experience or someone else's in whatever trauma they may have experienced. And it allows people to assume that one size fits all, which closes off further discourse about a topic. Doing so enables toxic, inappropriate, or outdated behavior or practice to actually continue. And this ranges from everything from foster and orphanage care to experiencing and relating to trauma in a therapeutic setting.
Yeah, and there are many such real-world cases in various different fields and disciplines where survivorship bias can influence decisions made. For example, in healthcare, if you have a clinical trial going on, patients who drop out of the study or experience no effects may be discarded in the final analysis when looking for a certain effect. In historical analysis, this is the common idea that the winner writes history. This happens to distort perceptions of past events if only successful examples or survivors are studied. This neglects the impact of failures and non-survivors. In business, the tendency to study successful companies, products, or strategies to help understand their success, which neglects failures. Again, this is going along with the Mark Zuckerberg example of dropping out of college and becoming super successful. And then finally, in statistical analysis, data from surviving entities or successful outcomes are included in the analysis, leading to biased estimations of probability if you discount failed or neglected numbers. One such real-world example of this is in World War II. When improving the armor on World War II aircraft, engineers analyzed where aircraft should be reinforced. They analyzed where bullet holes were on aircraft returning from combat missions, and they determined that the areas that sustained the most bullet holes should be reinforced the most. However, Abraham Wald, a mathematician at the time, he proposed adding armor to the areas with little to no bullet holes. He argued that the absence of damage in these areas on returning aircraft was where destroyed aircraft were likely receiving critical damage. Wald's proposition, it led to a significant change in the armoring structure of aircraft throughout the rest of the war, which contributed to the survival of many soldiers throughout the rest of the war effort. There are many ways to avoid survivorship bias. For example, using comprehensive data collection, where you collect data from both successful and unsuccessful trials, contributing data that shows failures along with successes. This gives you a broader sense of where the data is coming from. Then also controlling for confounding variables. You would identify and control for confounding variables that may influence outcomes and contribute to survivorship bias, such as background of, interviewed individuals and other such biases. And then finally, comparing between trials. You compare results from biased samples, where you exclude the examples that you do not want, such as failures or non-survivors, with the total sample collection. This highlights relevant differences between the samples.
So, survivorship bias is something that impacts everything from financial analysis to trauma as a way for us to cognitively shortcut our attempt to understand and bottleneck success and survival.